Hello, everyone. Today it is my misfortune to comment on an event which is one of the many things that makes 2026 feel like an ever increasing descent into the pits of hell, and that is the Granta Commonwealth Prize AI scandal. There have been an increasing number of AI scandals with books recently, from Shy Girl being revealed to be supposedly a mostly AI generated novel, to now AI infiltrating this actual literary contest. I have not had a lot of time to make videos lately. Life is very busy, and I've been finishing up the final edits on my novel, which I'm publishing soon. So this is just going to be kind of my general thoughts and impressions on the situation. So just to back up first to a couple years ago when these AI large language models first started coming out, and I heard that you could generate writing using this thing. I remember the very first time that I tried it out, I put an AI prompt in and I was like, this is ridiculous. What is this thing? And the thing spat out a fully formed essay in multiple paragraphs. It was pretty well written. I mean, it wasn't like a literary masterwork or anything, but it was decent, clean writing, and I just felt my heart totally sink. For pretty much the entirety of my life up till then, writing had been a skill and a strength that was really part of my identity, and it was something that made me really valuable. It was a valuable communication skill, and it was something that most people did not have. So the fact that I, from a young age, was able to write cleanly and clearly and express thoughts well was something that really made me stand out. I strongly believe that it's a huge part of what helped me get into an Ivy League school with my college essay, and it was something that I was known for both personally and professionally. I was that person that my friends would come to clean up their essays, and I would transform their essay, and they would say, wow, it's like night and day, you made it so much better. And I also wrote freelance articles as a professional. I would interview people for an industry magazine, collect all their quotes, and write it into a really sleek, good sounding article. It was really valuable. It was unique. There were not a lot of people that could do this. And it just felt like when AI came out, it took all of that away. Now, I know that this is not an experience unique to writers, sadly. This is something that's impacting a lot of different skilled professions, from coders to artists and graphic designers and many other fields. And the thing that's really frustrating is that when you're very good at the thing, what the AI is spitting out at this point is not as good as what true masters would do, but it's acceptable enough that most people and most corporations are going to be like, you know what, I prefer this cheaper, less good version to hiring an actual human person to make something that's better. We're seeing AI used as an excuse by companies to lay off lots of people. I recognize that this is causing a lot of disruption and there's a lot of unethical issues related to people that are not just writers. But as a writer, it feels like it's been very impactful. Anecdotally, I've heard of many freelance writers' businesses collapsing. Of course, this has been really bad for journalism as well, which is terrible because we really want humans to be writing journalism, but the corporations that own many of the newspapers at this point do not care. And I also lost my freelance writing position. It was never really said explicitly, but it was suspicious to me that my freelance writing gigs just so happened to dry up around the time that these AI things came out. Fortunately for me, I have a separate job that's completely unrelated to writing or communications, and so it didn't affect my livelihood, but it was still concerning. My primary thing is fiction, and so I was most interested in tracking the developments in fiction writing, and pretty much right around when the first AI large language models started going, some of the lit mags started to get flooded with AI written just like total garbage submissions. At this point, I was not a reader for a literary magazine, although I have been at different times in the past, but I remember seeing that Clarkesworld, which is one of the more prestigious sci-fi magazines, had to actually shut down their submissions temporarily because they were just flooded with so many AI submissions right away as soon as the AI models started to become popular. Part of that may have been because Clarkesworld is one of the few, I guess they're not technically literary, but a magazine where you can publish short fiction that actually pays you. And so I suspect that some of these people behind these AI submissions flooding into Clarkesworld were probably trying to make some money off of it, which is kind of hilarious in the dark way because like you basically never really make money from publishing fiction, I guess, unless in the event that you know someone and it gets turned into like a Netflix show or something. But it's like, this is not a really good or smart way to try to make money, but I think that's what some people were trying to do. They were kind of like, oh, if I can only make the next best-selling science fiction concept, this is worth it. Especially at that time when the models were still pretty new, they were just total garbage at fiction writing in particular. So the magazine editors could tell, like they could tell very obviously, like these are AI submissions. They don't even make sense. They're total garbage. Like whoever created these didn't even put the effort into like try to proofread them and make them somewhat plausible. They had to shut down submissions for a time. A few years have passed since then. The models have gotten better. Earlier this year, there was a massive scandal where a novel called Shy Girl came out. It had been previously self-published. It did really well with readers, and so it got picked up by a major publisher. People started to point out that it sounded like the writing had AI use in it. People ran it through AI detection scanners, and the publisher ended up pulling the book due to the backlash. One of my favorite conspiracy theories that I saw on Reddit, which, yes, I know Reddit is biased and leans into the conspiratorial thinking a bit, but I thought this was really interesting. So I saw one person that said, my conspiracy theory is that the publisher knew this was AI generated writing all along and put the book out there to see how audiences would react and see if this was acceptable. And it was sort of their form of pushing the envelope, which I think is really interesting because some of the big five publishers have not necessarily been super ethical about AI use versus not. They claim that they want authors to say that they're not using AI, but I'm not sure how strict they actually are about like making sure that that's true. It's interesting to see that people are now really paranoid about AI writing because I think at this point, public sentiment is still very much against AI generated fiction. We know that people are publishing AI generated fiction on Amazon, on Kindle, and trying to sell it to make money. But I think readers, just from what I can tell reading online, seem very upset about this. And it's like, art is a human activity. This is something that only humans can do. Yes, these things can generate small chunks of text that sound bland and good, but they don't have human emotion. They don't really understand the nuances that really make for the best fiction. People are on the hunt for AI writing. So one of the things that was really interesting about the Shy Girl incident is some people were saying like, well, this could be AI, and these AI supposed detectors say that it is, but they also can have a high false positive rate. And something that's concerning is that sometimes when a new writer starts out, they have kind of clunky phrasing. I mean, this is something that basically every artist has to go through. They have a period where they haven't really achieved their own style yet. They're imitating other people. They're imitating styles that they've seen, and their writing is not super like unique and polished yet. How much are these AI accusations going to quash the careers of new writers who haven't really quite found their footing yet? So I thought that was an interesting argument and one that's potentially concerning. So something that I've seen a lot is people have now started to talk about supposed telltale signs of AI. One is the M dash. Everybody's talking about how using lots of M dashes is supposedly a sign of AI, and using lists of threes, and then the not X but Y construction. So I find this really upsetting because I personally love to use M dashes and lists of three. I absolutely refuse to stop using M dashes in my writing. I think it's really offensive, actually, that human writers are now being pressured to change their own style, which the M dash is something that has been around forever. It's something that's a really useful punctuation mark. It's something that I personally have always used a lot in my writing. I mean, maybe sometimes a little too much. The idea that I'm supposed to stop doing something because these machines, which are already like stealing so much from us, are using this as a hallmark of their own writing, which, by the way, is based on stealing from previous authors and copying them to create the style, is just so wrong. And I refuse to stop doing it. And I hope that my own writing is distinctive enough that somebody would read it and like not think that it's AI. The thing that bothers me too is it feels like people that don't really pay attention to literary style are the ones that are like clinging to these supposedly obvious telltale signs of AI to call people out. And I've seen some interesting comments on some of the articles about this where people are saying like, yeah, I was editor of a textbook or of a book, and when I created the new edition, which had some of the same M dashes as in the previous version, they get people coming to them and saying like, oh, did you use AI? Like, I saw that there was an M dash on this page. That's just like so unacceptable to me. I refuse to stop using M dashes. I refuse to stop using lists of three. I'm not really a not X but Y writer, or at least I don't think I am. Maybe I am, but it's like concerning that these things are now being used to sort of like bully writers into not doing things just because of this other AI stuff. I think that's a serious problem. For a while, so-called literary writers, I think, were kind of consoling themselves saying like, okay, these large language models, they can generate like formulaic fiction, like romance and whatever. That bothers me too, because it's like, okay, well, even if this thing is taking romance writers' jobs away, that's a serious problem. Like, that's still something made by humans. It's still something that a person created and valued. And, romance writers, like, they can make money more so than literary writers. And you know what? Like, good for them. I hate that it's like pitting people against each other to kind of be like, oh, they took over your position, but not mine yet, so it's okay. And it's like, no, I don't think that's okay for anyone. But for a while, I think literary writers were kind of like hoping that it wouldn't come from them because supposedly their writing was unique enough and not formulaic that this wouldn't happen. And now it has. I think the first indication of this was when the New York Times ran a piece where they had a short story by Curtis Sittenfeld and they displayed it alongside a similarly themed AI short fiction piece, and you had to vote which one you thought was the person and which one was the AI. I got it wrong. I actually did get it wrong. And actually, maybe it was that you had to vote which one you liked better, I think, looking back on it. I liked the AI one better, which is kind of appalling. Part of it may have been because I don't love Curtis Sittenfeld's writing. It's just not for me. I haven't really enjoyed any of her books. And so maybe I just felt like naturally repelled by that. But still, it was kind of like this moment where it was like, ooh, this is a little scary. I don't like this. Now this trend has achieved what was perhaps inevitable. So Granta, which is a really prestigious literary magazine, one of the ones still standing, might I say, by the way. When I was growing up as a young writer, a lot of the lit mags that I hoped to be published in one day are now gone, like the Gettysburg Review. The Gettysburg Review was a very well-known lit mag. It was something to really aspire to be published in. And then that college shut it down because it doesn't make money. Because guess what? Like, art doesn't make money a lot of the time. That does not mean it's valueless. It has a lot of value. It's something we should protect. But of course, capitalists do not understand this. Gettysburg Review is gone. Tin House is gone. It's really sad. Granta is one of the ones still standing. They have long published young writers, new writers. It's been a really important institution in literary culture, and they run this Commonwealth Prize. It's a short fiction competition, and the recent winner, they posted his story online. People started coming out and pointing fingers at the story saying, this is AI. It was run through an AI detector and supposedly had a very high rate of potential AI use. And then people started accusing two other winners in the contest. Granta asked the writers to confirm that they had not used AI, and they did not. One of the writers came out and commented publicly that she has not used AI and never will. Granta said that they did not run the submissions through an AI detector because those things can have false positives. Then Granta put out this vague statement that kind of said nothing at all. They claimed that they used Claude to check the submissions after all this controversy, but Claude is just a general chatbot. It's not actually an AI detector, so that didn't really make a lot of sense. An additional layer of complexity in this story is that AI detectors have a higher false positive rate when they're written by non-native English writers and for people who speak English that is not American or British. The Commonwealth Short Story Prize is open to authors from 56 different countries. The person who wrote this Atlantic piece says that even if the author is just kind of naturally using some of the quirks that are supposedly associated with AI, like M dashes, then maybe their writing should be criticized anyway for resembling AI. And I hate that so much. Once again, it represents to me AI stealing territory that was human. It trained upon human texts. We shouldn't have to give up natural elements of our style just because this machine is now imitating us. There are so many elements of this story that I have really mixed feelings about. I don't like the AI witch hunts, but on the other hand, I understand their motivation because I don't want AI to become so common that it's winning literary prizes and that, it becomes so embedded in our culture that the judges of literary prizes can no longer tell the difference between AI and human writing. Like that is really concerning. At the same time, I appreciate this worry that the Atlantic article raised that it could be used to destroy the reputation of writers before they've even had a chance to establish themselves. One of the writers, it was interesting. So she said that she didn't use AI and she had time-stamped drafts, which she could use to prove that she didn't use AI, but then she declined to actually share them with the article writer, which I thought was interesting. The AI accusations are getting so rampant that apparently people are actually like putting typos back into their writing and leaving errors intentionally because writing something too perfectly can like get you accused of using AI, which really bothers me because as somebody that has always tried to clean up my writing as much as possible and to be grammatically correct and to not have typos, the fact that that now like gets you marked as a machine is actually really offensive because then it's like, oh, it's the expectation that human writing is bad and inaccurate. Like I hate this all so much. When we actually look at this story that's published in Granta, it's written in a way that I can see how it was kind of like catnip for the judges because there's like a certain style of MFA fiction that is like overly lyrical to the extent that it sort of obscures the plot and even like obscures the action. sometimes you can't entirely tell what's going on, and you're sort of supposed to like it if it's really poetic, which I don't really like that style of writing. It's not for me. I like things that are in the middle, where I do appreciate descriptive writing and cool metaphors, but also like not so much that it really bogs the writing down. And I would say that the short story published in Granta by Jamir Nazir does veer into that area of being much too descriptive, so lyrical and like so metaphorical that they don't even make sense, which I think is part of where the AI accusations are coming from, because he has a lot of writing that just like it sort of sounds good when you first glance at it, but then when you really think about it, it's like, wait, this doesn't make sense. But on the other hand, like you do see writers like Ocean Vuong writes in that style, where I don't really enjoy his prose. I think he's a good poet, but I don't enjoy his prose because I think he does kind of fall into the trap of relying too much on words that sound nice and pretty, but don't actually really make sense for the narrative, and sometimes like result in these over bogged down metaphors. So this story that won the Granta contest is kind of in that vein. I found it difficult to read, unenjoyable to read. It's interesting that the judges did favor this, because I do think it's sort of a style that is favored in the MFA literary world right now, but in my opinion, it is not a good story. Another item of suspicion that has been raised is that the author does not have much of an online footprint, and he doesn't have much of a publication track record, which again, I have such mixed feelings about this, because on one hand, it's like, yeah, it does seem sort of suspicious in this context. Like, he's an older author. It seems strange that he wouldn't have published anything before. It seems strange that he doesn't have any kind of online presence. On the other hand, I don't like that that's now, become an element of suspicion, because it's like, what if this guy never had the opportunity to write before? Like sometimes you do see older writers emerge who they've been stewing on this for a long time. And, they haven't had the chance because of whatever life circumstances to publish before. And I hate that there's this idea that everyone has to have an online footprint. Social media is terrible. It's very distracting, and it is completely opposed to the life of the mind and concentration that you need to cultivate as a writer. To me, it's like you should not have to have a social media presence to be a writer. And yet that's sort of the way things have gone. It's so much harder to get noticed, to even get published, if you don't have any kind of social media presence. But the fact that this person doesn't really have an online footprint was sort of used as evidence that maybe he's not even a real person. One of the articles mentioned oh, even his photo looks suspiciously airbrushed. And it's okay, but everyone's photos are suspiciously airbrushed. He doesn't have YouTube or Instagram, or I guess writers used to be on what was formerly known as Twitter a lot. Blue Sky doesn't seem like it's really replaced the formerly active literary community that was there on Twitter as much. Probably some people are still clinging to what is now X. But usually writers have at least a website or something. As far as I can tell, he does not have a website. He does, however, post on LinkedIn. Some of the pieces hyperlinked to this long post he wrote about AI. And that's kind of weird for a literary figure. Usually literary figures are not interacting on LinkedIn, and they're not writing praiseworthy things about AI on LinkedIn. So that I do think is a bit suspicious. He also uses the hashtags AI, leadership, strategy, critical thinking, future of work, management, governance, policy. Not the kind of hashtags that writers usually use. And once again, it's okay, not everyone has to go along with the crowd, but that's not really an artsy personality kind of thing. LitHub, which is a literary news site, noted that he did self-publish a book of poems on Amazon. And to me, this is one of the more suspicious parts, not the self-publishing. I'm about to self-publish my own book, for which I could not find a publisher. I think self-publishing is it's getting really interesting in that it's kind of providing a space for books that are a little unusual, or not with current trends that the publishers won't pick up. I don't think self-publishing is a bad thing. The thing that's kind of weird is the description of this poetry book. It's very poorly written, just the back cover blurb. It's written in a really cringy, not very literary way. It feels like a self-published book that's written by somebody without much experience. This was published in 2018, and while it's possible that this person, may have really buckled down and worked on his craft enough to impress the Granta judges over the last several years, I don't know, I find it a little weird. As of now, the story is still up on the Granta website. It is called The Serpent in the Grove, so you can read it if you want. I couldn't get through the whole thing. I found it dull and, to me, not well written. There are a lot of sentences that don't quite make sense. Here's an example. They called her Zungi. Maybe it was a name, semicolon. Maybe Rain took a shape and decided to keep it. Rain took a shape? I'm not sure what that's saying. She had the kind of walking that made benches become men. What does that even mean? Hair tumbling wild, A dress that caught and released light, laughter with iron under it. I mean, I guess this could mean hair tumbling wild, nothing wrong with that. It feels a little cliched to me, but it's fine. A dress that caught and released light. I mean, I'm guessing maybe this is her dress as she's like running and it's like catching in the sun, but it's a little too obscure to really make sense. Laughter with iron under it. I mean, that sort of makes sense, I guess. I guess it's like the laugh of somebody that has lived a really hard life. Eyes that skimmed and did not land, as if what she wanted was elsewhere and she had to pass through men to get there. I don't mind that. That's fine to me. You know, I'm picturing a character whose gaze is always moving and she had to pass through men to get there. Men are standing in her way. It's sort of this interesting mix of things that like don't make sense at all. Like they were reaching for poetic and totally overshot it, and things that are okay. Like she had to pass through men to get there. It's like, okay, it's kind of a metaphor talking about how like men are standing in her way and oppressing her. It's fine. I mean, I don't love it. I think it's a little bit much, a little heavy-handed, but like if I read this in another MFA author short story, like I would probably believe it. But then there's just like there's more things that are totally odd. Here's one. The ring of stone lay where Coco gave to Bush, its mouth boarded with ply and chance. I genuinely have no idea what this sentence means. So another thing that I'm seeing anecdotally online is like people that are not really confident in their own taste are saying that like sometimes when they read this like nonsense, ostensibly AI generated writing, they feel like, oh, well, I feel kind of incompetent anyway when I'm reading something complicated, and I feel like maybe I just didn't understand it. I think that's okay if you're reading something that you know is older and is like in a style that you're not as familiar with. So like if you're attempting to tackle like Moby Dick or Wuthering Heights for the first time and you feel and the style feels like a bit opaque to you at first, I think that's totally normal. It does take time when you're used to like 21st century language and attention spans to like get yourself into the mode of reading an older text that can feel kind of not super easy to understand at first. However, when it's like current day writing and you read it and you're like, I have no idea what this is trying to say. I trust my own judgment because I read a lot of books and I know that my taste overlaps enough with the canon to be like, okay, I trust my taste. I appreciate why books like Moby Dick and Middlemarch are considered to be masterpieces because I truly understand that those books are indeed some of the greatest books in English that have been written. Therefore, I trust my taste enough to be like, I don't understand what this is saying. This author is just writing poorly. And I wish that literacy were still valued enough in our society that more people had the confidence to do that for themselves. Because this is the thing that's like really sad to me overall is like books and literary culture are just so under siege in our society. They are very much under attack. All kinds of humanities programs are being cut at all levels of schools. Our minds are basically under an assault by social media companies, which have intentionally addicted us to their platforms, shortened our attention spans and pushed propaganda on us, reduced our media literacy, reduced our ability to engage deeply with, I hate the word content, but I'm going to say content that was created in the past that took time to create, that requires focused attention and sustained attention and concentration to understand and appreciate, and which in doing so we improve the quality of thought in our own minds. And these companies are very actively trying to steal that experience from us, to steal the experience of engaging with humanistic works, whether that be paintings or books or longer pieces of music like the type that you find in classical music. They're trying to steal that from us. I mean, so it is happening with these AI models, but I think it's also been happening for a much longer time where there is this like assault on our time and attention itself. And the experience of being part of that human tradition of reading and appreciating books that came before our own lifetimes that require sitting with the book, spending time reading it and not being interrupted every 5 seconds, that very experience is under attack. And, you know, it's interesting to me that perhaps because of that, it's contributing to people who don't have the confidence to trust their own judgment about what is real, what is a good piece of literature, what is not. I also just want to say that I deeply resent that as an author who has been working on my craft for years, for a really long time, have written so many short stories, have rewritten so many drafts of my novel, and my novel is finally done. I knew that there would be risks that like I wouldn't get it published or like it wouldn't be well received. Maybe it's bad. Like that's, you know, very scary to like spend a long time in your life like striving for something and hoping that you'll be good at it. And maybe you're not good at it. That's scary. I never even imagined that something I would have to deal with when I, finally got around to finishing the thing was that there would be these freaking like machines writing, and that would be something I would have to worry about. It would be something that could like undermine my own legitimacy, where it's like, I used M dashes. I used a lot of M dashes in this book. Some people are going to look at that and be like, oh my God, she wrote it using AI. Some people are going to look at the fact that I use grammar mostly correctly and write cleanly and don't have typos and say she used AI. And that's like really upsetting. I mean, I know that it's something I can't control. Like, I guess in the way that you can't control anything about how people react to your work now, that's just like another element of it where it's like, some people are going to read this and think it's AI for whatever reason, like probably for reasons I can't even anticipate. And there's nothing I can do about it. And like, I honestly, so I know personally that I wrote every word of this thing myself. Every word in the book is my own writing. I mean, I have the drafts, I guess, like going back that I could use to prove it or whatever. But like probably some people would think it's AI anyway, and that's just like so upsetting. One thing that I did use AI for was to help me streamline my querying letter when I was querying agents last year, because I had a really hard time like summarizing the book in a way that was punchy in the way that agents want. And so I think I will use like some pieces of that for the back of the book blurb, but that is the only element. I do intend to hire a real artist to do the cover art. I think AI covers look terrible, and also like we should be employing artists to actually make art, just as writers want people to employ them to make writing. And of course, I knew I would be competing with other writers who write similarly and who I feel that like in some cases are both better and worse than me, but I never thought I would be competing with like a computer algorithm. So it's nuts. I do kind of hate this timeline. I think it's perhaps inevitable that as writers, we will continue to compete with AI, and we're going to have to like deal with these accusations of using AI, whether true or not, going forward. Writers are probably going to start having to use mechanisms to prove that they actually wrote something. So I've recently gone back to handwriting, which I write in cursive. I don't know. I'm a dinosaur. I think I was like the last generation of children that actually learned cursive in school. And I actually love writing in cursive. I've always liked it. I prefer it greatly. It's so much easier than printing. It's faster. It's better. It looks more elegant. I'm sorry, I said it. So there's a part of me that's like, oh, if I get accused of like my future writing projects using AI, I can, I guess, show these pictures of these cursive drafts, but then I'm like, well, no one can read cursive anymore, so they'll probably look at it and be like, that's just nonsense. Like, that's not real writing. I have in the past used Google Docs very heavily, which I know is terrible. Like, it's not ideal, but I like to use Google Docs because it's like in the cloud. And so I was able to access my draft from anywhere, like if I was traveling or using different computers, because I have like a personal laptop and I have a work laptop. And it's like, well, sometimes if I'm out and about with my work laptop and I have some free time at lunch or something, like it's nice to be able to pull up my draft and work on some stuff. I guess my Google Doc like has my whole history of revisions. And then I guess I have like, copies of the Word documents that I sent to my writing group for critiques, like stretching back over the years. But it's like interesting because people are being very witch hunty about it in a way right now, which I think is a good thing. Like, I like that people are policing this. I mean, I don't like that they're doing it in a way that sometimes feels kind of dumb to me, where it's like, oh, if you used a list of 3 or an M dash or like one of these things, then it must be AI. I don't like that. But I do like that people care enough to actually like make a scandal over this and raise these questions instead of just like accepting this AI intrusion into like human life and art. So I do think it's good that people are pushing back and, questioning these companies and questioning these horrific data centers that are like stealing our water and using disgusting amounts of energy, destroying the climate even more, when like AI has some good uses, such as like helping with medical diagnoses, but like so much of it is just used to generate garbage. And it's like, we really don't need these horrible data centers, particularly this stupid one that they're like trying to build in Utah, which is a desert, which already is in a water crisis. Our governor is simultaneously saying that he wants to save the Salt Lake and like announce that there's an emergency because of the drought, but also wants this data center. So there's just like, there's a lot of magical thinking going on in these data center advocates. And I think it's really good that the public is pushing back and is saying like, no, we do not want these things. Like, we don't need this data center destroying our environment, destroying our communities and our land. And we don't want to just give in to this AI push. They're also using a lot of fear mongering. They're telling us that like, oh, we have to build these AI data centers because we're competing with China. And it's like, that's not a good reason to destroy our own landscape. and destroy our own water sources. And they're saying that people opposing this are like Chinese spies. I think it might be the other way around if anyone involved is like a spy or like an advocate for a foreign government, because destroying our own water sources that feels very much like something your enemies would do. I'm not saying I think that they're in the pockets of China. I just think it's like ridiculous that they're saying that people who are raising questions about this are, when the destruction that they are seeking to inflict on their own communities is so vast that's like, whose side are you on? So I'm curious to know what people think. Do you think it's an outrage that this ostensibly AI generated story has been published by Granta and celebrated with a prize? How do you feel about that story still being on the website? Should this story have been removed when the potentially credible accusations of AI came out? Or is it something that we don't really want to go down that rabbit hole of saying that authors used AI and potentially wielding it as a weapon against authors' careers? What does everyone think? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.